I'd like to call this county commission meeting to order. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
If you have any cell phones, could you please put those on silent? We'll take a moment of silent prayer. Thank you. I'll begin the roll call this morning with Commissioner Doug Smith.
Here.
Commissioner Mike Stevens.
Here.
Commissioner Vicki Cos.
Here.
Commissioner Mike Smith.
Here.
Commissioner Jeff Culbertson is here. Public comment. I have one person signed up for public comment, Matthew Watson. If you could come to the podium, state your name and address for the record, please, and you have 3 minutes. Thank you.
Matthew Watson, address is 26567 187th Street in Leavenworth. So on June 18th, we experienced a total loss fire, and we are attempting to try to rebuild the house, and we found out that our parcel is non-conforming. So we're working on trying to go through that process of getting it either rezoned or get a variance, but due to time restraints coming up onto wintertime, if we don't get a building permit like today, we won't be able to make our black in, and therefore we'll run out of our insurance money paying for our rental that we're in currently. So I'm just trying to get an emergency building permit so I can get the process started so we can rehouse our family.
So can I understand this? You lost your home in a fire, and
Yes.
we're using the abatement process, but you're being held up because of they've discovered after the fire, they discovered when you're pulling your permits and everything that your property's not in conformance.
Correct.
And so they want to run that through the planning commission process, or
Yeah,
what?
we met with planning and zoning yesterday when they let us know that we are zoned R5, but we're under 5 acres. We're at 2.2. So they want to run us through the variance process, which is fine. I have no problem going through that process, except the first meeting that they can get us into, they said, was November 13th, which puts us starting our build after that date, right around December, which we won't be able to make our black in before it gets cold.
And your home doesn't have anything to do with it's the land that's not in conformity.
Correct. The fact that I'm under 5 acres.
Well, didn't we deal with this on them other homes that burnt that was non-compliant? We just started the variance process and gave the building permit. We've already dealt with this type of thing.
I don't know.
It would have been.
Commissioners, I think,
You were here, Mike.
Yeah,
I
I'm not sure he was. I think it was in 17 or 18, actually. And I think it happened when we had people coming in with the buildable lot letters, and then we had, I think it was like a mobile home that had a fire, and they were on a piece of property that was existing non-compliant. And at that time, I believe, and I'd have to go back to the minutes to check, but I believe the commission stated on the non-compliant parcels that already had a home that they wanted to waive that.
The fees and everything.
Yeah,
the county was going to waive the variance fees, and they were going to give a permit and start the variance process and allow them to get the variance going while they were getting their house built.
I remember that meeting, but I do believe we were still at 3 commissioners instead of 5 then. So,
Well, that sounds, I don't know.
so
what do we need to do?
I think it was probably just you that was on the commission.
Okay, because I remember saying we've been cashing their checks for all these years for their taxes, and then all of a sudden it's not compliant.
I don't see
So what do we
one.
need
we
to do
need
to
to-
comply with that?
Yeah,
Well,
we need to figure
I
out.
thought we already dealt with it.
Well, and here's the danger of those. Sometimes we, being Board of County Commissioners, made that during an open meeting. They made that a policy decision, but it was never formally introduced into the building guidelines. So,
Well, who dropped the ball on that?
When you have somebody probably 5 or 6 years ago, I'm guessing.
Okay, somebody dropped the ball, though.
Yes,
We
I agree.
wanted that in a policy, and it didn't happen.
Yeah, it
So somebody dropped the ball.
Well, I don't
Why should
see,
this guy be suffering for it?
I agree. I don't see any reason in the world.
I think what you have is the existing staff was unaware of that because they weren't here.
Well, I understand. I'm not blaming the existing staff, but I think he's on a timeline, and I think we've done it in the past. We should jump all over
Absolutely.
doing it
He should get a
again.
building permit, and we should start the variance process, and it shouldn't cost him anything.
I
So we
agree.
should codify the policy.
So,
Yes, I
so
agree.
what I would suggest is, and I remember the meeting too because it was mentioned, once buildable, always buildable. I'll
Exactly.
never forget that phrase.
Yes.
And I agree with everything we're saying here, but to just make a decision to give them the okay right now, it's not on the agenda or anything. I think it's a bad idea. I think we should put this on next week's agenda and then pick up where it got dropped off, where we actually formalize.
I think he's on
He needs
time.
the
Too
permit
much
today,
to wait a
right?
week.
But he needs the permit
You
today.
need the permit today to move ahead.
I think we settled this several years ago.
I think we
It
just
shouldn't be coming up.
we just need to move forward. He's come in. It's been part of our practice before. I understand what chairpersons say.
But with
I-
a week's not going to make that.
It is apparently.
I think it is.
Well, it all depends. I mean, we all know the weather here in Kansas, and
Right.
the roof needs to go on when it's above 40 degrees. So,
Right.
I mean, today is a perfect example. It's 50 degrees out there right now. Who's to say in 2 weeks I mean, I know we're in 90 degree, but November 1st could be.
Yeah,
I just think
I'm
that
just
we
saying
need
we
to-
haven't done any homework on this, so just
I
pass it
have.
on
But
the fly
the-
today.
I
I'm
have.
talking about his specific details.
Well, I drive by it I used to till
Okay,
they took the
but
bridge
there
out.
could be something like
it's-
floodplain.
the
There should
foundation
be a
is
lot of
still
things
there.
going
We're
on.
using the exact same foundation
Right,
and
I
putting
think
it
that we
in the
need to
exact
just-
same spot.
But do you know if it's in a
with the same
floodplain or
footprint.
not? Do you know if it's too close to the road?
If it's
do
in
you
the
know if
floodplain,
there's
it's
John?
overlapping?
in the floodplain.
Yeah, I'm just
Right.
saying. I'm just saying we should do a little homework before we just
I don't
approve
think
it.
so.
And then next week, I have no problem putting this on the agenda and forwarding the permit for next.
But I think
Wednesday.
staff would know if it's in the floodplain. I mean,
John,
Yeah, it's not a floodplain issue.
Okay, if you already know that there's no other issues.
No,
I don't
there's
have
no
a
other
problem.
issues.
guys, we just need to move on this. I can understand that, but we're up here as a body, and we make exceptions to rules when there's
Sure.
emergency. And this, to me, is a fine example of emergency. Let's get done and move
And I
on.
We were supposed to
I
have
agree
this
with this.
memorialized how many years ago?
Yeah.
Yeah,
4 or
and
5
we
years
got to
ago?
fix that too, Doug.
I agree with what you all are saying 100%, but I'm
I
just
know,
saying
I
if you
understand.
haven't done any homework, seeing maybe it's in a floodplain.
So,
Mr. Chairman,
So,
I just want to ask either John or Misty, what form should the motion for this be in?
I guess it depends on the motion. If you're asking to have a motion to put it on the agenda today,
No.
okay.
No,
Oh, yes,
We can have it
today,
put on the
today,
agenda. We can
what
add
do
it to the
need
agenda
make as a
today.
motion?
Well, you would need to move to put it on the agenda so that you can then
Vote
move
on
to
something.
approve the exception.
it doesn't need a public hearing, so we could do it on the fly today.
You could move
And-
to amend your agenda.
And Mr. Jacobson, is there any other issues, the variance that they've applied for already,
No,
other than the size, minimum
No,
size?
we've actually condensed that timeline and went to the minimum statutory criteria for timeline. So we're squeezing him in as
So-
quickly as we can. We want to help him in any way we can. There's a number of things you could do to accommodate him. You could give me the direction to issue a tentative building permit based on the outcome of the variance, assuming the variance goes through. If not, you can take further action. We'll go back through the resolutions. We'll go back through text amendments that we have and make sure that Doug's issues were recorded. If they weren't, then we'll be happy to bring a text amendment before you if that's the will of the commission and get that changed formally and get it incorporated and
Yeah.
codified.
And this is a good example of, I'm going to use vacated streets for an example. There are hundreds of vacated streets out there that the county commission voted on in a commission meeting. That legally vacates it. But they dropped the ball and didn't record it in the register of deeds or
Right.
public works or anything else.
Somebody didn't do their job.
So then down the road, years later, you can't find a vacation ordinance on that road because even though it was legally vacated at a commission meeting,
I
they dropped
understand.
the ball recording it.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what's happened.
Well, I'm just under the impression when we decide something there, somebody's supposed to do their
Yeah.
job and follow up
Yeah.
and get it, but I guess we'll just have to stay on that better.
Okay.
So, Mr. Chairman,
need to
I'd like
adjust
to
the-
move that we place this on the agenda for today.
I'll
Second.
second it.
Motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, begin voting with Commissioner Doug Smith.
Aye.
Aye.
Absolutely.
Aye. Motion carries. So it's on today's agenda now.
So then we can.
So I would entertain a motion to
I move
give them
that
a
we,
temporary.
ask or direct planning and zoning to issue a building permit and start the variance process on this property.
Second.
Contingent on it passing the later.
We've been cashing these checks for a lot of years.
Yep.
I agree. I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, begin voting with Commissioner Doug Smith.
Aye.
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 Absolutely.
Aye. There you go. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thanks, John.
Next, public comment. Any other public comment in the room? Anybody have anything? If not, we'll move on to administrative business. Mr. Lothar, you have anything for us this morning?
Just one item, Commissioners, that I just wanted to hopefully get a little bit of guidance on. As we're working through our insurance renewal earlier in the year and our budget, I brought to you at the direction of the Board of County Commissioners, we submitted a health insurance renewal that the employees did not have to increase what they paid for that for their coverage. At that time, I mentioned the fact that there may be some other benefits that have to be modified in order to help absorb that increased cost to the county, and specifically anticipated the sick leave buyback policy may have to be amended. So working forward, I've been watching our usage on our health insurance to see what the forecast is for the next year, and our usage has not went down, which we didn't anticipate, but it continues to climb at double-digit rates, somewhere in the 20% range. With that, I just think that we're going to have to address that sick leave buyback policy. I'm not asking you to do that today, but as we were looking through it, something that did come up that I would like a little guidance, because I'm planning to bring a policy to you for consideration, is that occasionally we have two employees working for the county on our health insurance plan, and one of them retires and the other one continues to work. And when they do that, most of the time they will convert to a family plan where the employee who's still here stays on the family plan, whereas before they could have been on two individual plans. That saves the county money, and so we really encourage them to do that, obviously, because it saves the county money overall. But then you have a scenario where now the second employee is going to retire, and they will no longer be on our health insurance, but the former employee who already retired is still eligible. So our plan didn't anticipate that or specifically allow for it. I believe that it would be the Commission's intention that a former employee who retired would still be eligible to come back on if their current employee is no longer eligible. And so I'm just asking if that sounds correct.
Sounds correct to me.
So I can implement that into a policy change.
Is that how it's handled in other organizations?
I did not check with other organizations, Commissioner. I doubt many of them have to deal with this kind of a subject. We rarely deal with it.
It's very rare.
It's maybe 2 times since I've been here that we've had that instance come up. So
Yeah.
I'm just asking that we can formalize that, and I'll put that in the policy when I bring it to you.
I'm fine with
Make
it.
sure you supported it.
Good, Jeff.
Sounds good to me.
Okay.
5, yep, all 5 agree.
Okay.
But one thing I do want to have, when we do that sick leave policy, I do want to make sure we have time to have we're having a good discussion on that.
I will
That's
absolutely.
very important to me.
Yeah, I agree, and I understand it impacts people, and I'm sure that they may be reaching out to some of the commissioners. But I want to remind everybody that we talked about this as part of the budget.
Sure.
This is not new. We're not dropping this at the last minute or anything, and that it's not an elimination. We've moved one benefit that affected 35 people to a benefit that impacted all 240 employees.
Right.
So
Okay.
and it's not done. We're still working on it. I hope to come up with the most palatable solution as possible.
But the way I look at that, Mark, is what you just said. I understand the concept where maybe we could bump up everybody, all 400 employees, a little bit to cover the few that are retiring and cover the sick leave thing. But you got to look at it, the way I look at it is that bumping that up for the retirees includes the 400 people when they get to that point. So I understand what you're saying is, well, if you're going to pass policy that affects 400 or just 30, really, though, it doesn't. It still affects all 400 because all those 400 are eligible for this program once they get to a retirement age. So
Even more
that's
than
the way
that,
look
I
at it.
kind of just, I know we're not going to discuss it, but just since Jeff brought this up, I don't see I could support doing that way with anybody's employed now. Now, with the way the economy is and property tax, something like that, future employees, which I'd hate to do, I'd be willing to have that conversation. But right now, and I know you're going to bring something back to us, Mark, you're doing your best with those numbers, and numbers don't lie. For people that knew coming in, this was part of their thing. This is kind of sensitive to me.
It was like a contract they were promised, and then you yanked the rug out from under them.
Yeah.
And I agree with that. Maybe for the new employees, the hard part about that is
Getting
new
people
capers,
to come here.
New capers
free.
is already bad anyway.
Well, I'm not saying we would. I don't even say
Yeah.
we'd stay with it. I'm
on the same page.
I'm kind
Commissioners, I
of.
just want to remind you, that's how we were able to pass what we did during the budget season. So failure to make a change implicates a $250,000 impact to our budget that was not anticipated.
I understand that
We'll
too.
discuss that when it comes up, but I'm just saying, it's not free.
I understand that, but this is a policy change that I don't think is up to administration to do.
It's
This
not.
would take a board of commissioners.
I told you I'd bring it to the Board of County Commissioners.
I understand, but there's already been memos going out saying, hey, you're going to lose this
I think
January
we told
1.
people anticipate it just in case, so that they don't get the rug pulled out from under them last minute like it happened last time.
I
Yeah,
understand.
as of 10 o'clock today, remember that one?
Mm-hmm. Exactly like that.
What'd you leave behind? I left $80-some thousand worth of sick leave.
Yep,
Yeah.
I lost about $55,000.
Mark, we understand the position, and you did make us aware of it, so I appreciate that. You bring it to us again. I just think we need to have a discussion about it so we can take a look at it.
Yeah.
Some things are just, to me, more important than other things.
Yeah.
But we know where the budget's at. We're having to live it.
Right. Yeah, I know, but
Yeah.
man, I'm telling you.
I know, Doug.
And,
I'm not saying I disagree.
We can't give the salaries like, but we can try to get the benefits.
Agree. Do you have anything else, Mark?
No.
Okay.
That's enough.
Anybody else have anything for?
I got just one thing.
Yes, sir.
Just a reminder that after next week's meeting, Commissioner Stephen and I will be going to the economic conference that we went to last year. It's down in Wichita. It's a great conference.
yeah.
It's a great conference. That's all I have, Jim.
That's a good idea. I was asked to reread the speech I gave at the Chamber of Commerce meeting last week, so I was going to do that. It's going to read a little funny because I was following up our county appraiser, so bear with the first couple sentences. Good evening, and thank you for having me tonight. You just heard our county appraiser explain the appraisal system and how that works. I use the term "our county appraiser" loosely because he's not really the county's appraiser. He actually works for the property valuation department in Topeka. The state of Kansas makes every county have an appraiser. The state of Kansas makes all 105 counties use the same appraisal system, whether that's the best taxing system for any particular county or not. If it were up to me, I would never use a property tax system for Leavenworth County. Using this property tax system is exactly why your property taxes are so ridiculously high. Only 33,000 people pay property taxes in Leavenworth County. If I were allowed to use the best system for our county, it would be either an income tax system and or a sales tax system. Hundreds of thousands of people pay income tax and sales tax in our county instead of only 33,000. So those numbers by themselves would result in drastically lowering your property household taxes. Another big problem with using property tax for our county is Leavenworth County is almost 50% property tax exempt. So not only do a small number of people pay all the bills, half of our county pays absolutely nothing into the county budget. This means the other half are paying twice as much to make up for the exempt. The statewide property tax system in place today is the wrong system for Leavenworth County. Until this is fixed, your property taxes will continue to spiral out of control. A 1% income tax would completely eliminate property taxes in Leavenworth County. Ask yourself, would you trade paying 1% more state income tax instead of what you're paying in property tax? The average dollar amount for households would mean paying about $100 more in income tax to eliminate about $3,000 a year in your property tax. This is one of the proposals I testified on in Topeka. I worked with Senator Haley in Wyandotte County to try and get House Bill 79 passed that would do exactly this. But it never even made it to the floor. The big problem is our state legislators have to pass statewide mandates, meaning most every law they pass applies universally to all 105 counties. So even if a law is not good for a few counties, the majority rules. This property tax system works fine for about 95 counties. So even though it does not work for about 10 counties, we use it anyway. Because when they vote on a law, even if 10 counties voted against it, the 95 counties get the vote. This is why Leavenworth County is forced to use the wrong system. We need legislation that is county specific, not just the tax issues either. For example, to help illustrate this, speed limits on gravel roads. The statewide legislation for speed limits on unposted gravel roads for every county is 55 miles an hour. Because most counties out west have mostly gravel roads that are almost all those gravel roads are straight and flat. So 55 mile an hour works fine. But in the eastern part of the state, like our county, it would be insane to drive 55 miles an hour on some of our gravel roads. But since the state always passes statewide legislation, it applies to us too. Like a lot of state regulations, one size does not fit all, but we do it anyway. This is why the County Commission has presented several solutions to high property tax in Topeka. We have not been successful as of yet on any one of those, but we continue to try. One such request is the income tax instead of the property tax, like House Bill 79 talks about, that has not been passed by our legislators. Another request is a 4% cap on valuation increases. Many folks are crippled with drastically increased taxes each year because they're seeing their property valuations increase up to 20% in 1 year. We ask that they put a limit of 4% on valuation increases per year. This way a person could at least adjust slowly to the big tax jumps. If their value went up 20% in 1 year, it would be spread out over a 5-year period. If we could do this at the county government level, we would have already done it, but it can only be done by state legislation. Another measure that would help reduce your property taxes was the LAVTR. If you don't know what the LAVTR is, that's the reason it was taken away. Many years ago, the state saw exactly what I'm talking about, with property taxes being the wrong system. They set up the LAVTR to spread some of the burden from property tax onto sales tax. They passed a law saying the state will collect 1.5% sales tax and give it to the counties and the cities to offset property tax. But in 2006, when the state got into financial trouble, they stopped giving that 1.5% sales tax to the counties and instead just kept the money for themselves. This county commission has testified over and over in Topeka over the last 5 years, but instead of following the law on the books and paying the counties, they abolished the LAVTR law altogether. The ironic part is they are still collecting the 1.5% sales tax you're still paying now. Another plan we proposed is building a new bridge connecting us to Kansas City much better. If you increase your business, commercial, and industrial properties, your property taxes will drastically be reduced. But to do this, you have to be desirable for those businesses to come here. Being an hour away from Kansas City is not desirable. I use Liberty, Missouri as an example of this. They were struggling with high property taxes and actually losing population until they were connected better to North Kansas City with major highways. Today, they can't keep up with new construction and were able to cut their mill levies in half, all because of the connectivity to the major metropolitan area. Most people don't realize that Lansing, Kansas, and Parkville, Missouri are only 1 mile apart. But because of the river, you have to drive 30 minutes to connect them. If we built a new bridge in the best location, you could get from Quick Trip in Lansing to KCI Airport in 6 minutes. Our industrial parks would fill up overnight with this kind of connectivity. This would result in drastically lowering your property taxes, but I can't get any of our state legislators to help facilitate this idea. Another measure that would reduce your property taxes is a pilot check from the federal government. This touches on the first thing I talked about, how almost 50% of our county is tax exempt. The biggest non-contributor of this is the federal government. It is true our county is the third largest income tax earner in the state, but zero income tax goes into the county budget. So the fort actually creates an economic obsolescence for our county budget. An example of this is our EMS service. It costs me and you $2 million each year to keep our ambulance service operating. The fort uses our ambulance service, but they pay zero to maintain it. The federal government sees this in a lot of instances across the country. That's why they pay a pilot check, payment in lieu of taxes, to the communities that have a large exempt federal presence in those communities. Every community that has a Department of Interior facility gets a pilot check for millions of dollars every year. that they are losing from property tax exemptions, but they do not pay pilot checks to communities with Department of Defense facilities for some reason. I've been to D.C. to work on this issue because I can't get our local legislators to ask them why. Everyone in D.C. tells me this needs to be fixed, but it begins at our local legislators level. We should be receiving about $35 million a year in the county budget for exempt federal property. Since we don't, you and I have to make up that difference. In closing, I just want to make sure you understand there's only so much your county government can do. Relieving high property taxes is not one of them. The county budget is not why your property taxes are high. Please stop trying the same practices over and over every year and expect a different result. Until most people understand all this, the problem will not only continue, it will get worse. Every problem is fixable, but you have to actually understand what the problem is or it won't get fixed. Thank you.
Thanks, Jeff.
That's all I have for administrative business. If anybody has anything
Oh, we're
else.
going to do this video?
Were we going to talk more about RVs and cross-access, but that cross-access easement roads and abandoned houses? Didn't we talk about that last week?
That's the.
I remember.
I thought
Wait.
we were.
Didn't Bob's going to come up.
Today, or is that?
Today is the road on local service, the policy on local service.
Because Bob's
When,
going to
when were we going to address that?
I think that's where it's going to be.
Well, are you talking about the policy you just adopted a couple of weeks ago? the change
Yeah, that we
to the-
brought up last week.
You'd like
For a
to
short time.
have another work session on that?
And that's what we said.
We can schedule one.
Next week?
Sure.
That'll work. We'll get that on the schedule for next week. Consent agenda. We can move on to that.
Mr. Chair, I move that we approve the consent agenda as presented.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, begin voting with Commissioner Doug Smith.
Aye.
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 Aye. Consent agenda passes. Formal board actions. Consider a motion to approve.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes,
were
sir.
we going to watch this?
That's
appraisal?
under-
I think that's at
Yeah,
the
I
end
think
of work
that's
session.
coming up in the.
Yeah, okay.
Let's get to work session.
Yeah. Is that in the work session, Mark? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Consider a motion.
Before the work session, it's the under presentation.
Okay. Consider a motion to approve 2024 Edward Byrne grant in the amount of $10,000 for the purchase of law enforcement equipment for the Sheriff's Department. Good morning.
Morning.
Yeah, I think the city of Leavenworth just
Has this been a year already?
had
Time
this on
flies.
their
Something.
meeting.
Every year we come
Well,
over,
time flies
Yeah.
when you're having fun.
Time flies when you're having
discuss
fun.
this. That's it. We utilize it for the, most generally, the body cam and dash cam projects. There are other areas of technology that we utilize it for in an effort to keep pace with the expectations of local law enforcement nationwide. We're co-partners with Leavenworth PD in this grant. If I can get a signature from you, we can proceed.
We've been doing this for a long time. Even Lansing, these are great grants. Is there any comments? Because not, I'll go ahead and make a motion to approve the 2024 Edward Byrne grant in the amount of $10,000 for the purchase of law enforcement equipment for the Sheriff's Department.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, begin voting with Commissioner Doug Smith.
Aye.
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 Aye. I got a sign for you.
He's got a gun. He can have it.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank
sir.
you.
Simple
sir.
and painless.
Thank you, sir. Moving on, consider a motion to award bid to Cirrus for IBM hardware and software licensing and engage FSC for professional services in the amount not to exceed $42,900.30. I don't see Larry. Are you doing this, Mark? Or?
I can handle it.
All right.
The AS400 is the system that we run all the software for the treasurer's office, and the appraiser use it as well. It is at end of life. IBM is not going to provide service updates to it starting next year, so it's time to update it. This was not a planned purchase at this time, but we knew it was coming, and there are sufficient funds available in the equipment reserve for this.
They've been using the AS400 since 1985.
Probably not this one.
Not that version, but
this-
yeah.
Let's hope it's
They
we
do
don't want to be
last
like
quite a
state of
while.
Kansas on their program.
Yeah. I think they had a risk 6,000 actually just before that. I'll consider a motion.
Mr. Chair, I move to award bid to Sirius for IBM hardware and software licensing and engage FSC for professional services in the amount not to exceed $42,900.30.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, Commissioner Doug Smith.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes. Next, consider a motion to approve the wellness incentive policy effective October 1st, 2024.
Morning.
Good morning, Mike.
Morning, Mike.
We've talked about this over the last few months with the implementation of the Wellness Committee at the beginning of 2024. There were ideas and things talked about of how we could incentivize our employees to start to take care of themselves better, do their wellness checks, just take care of their overall well-being. So in an effort to help them reduce their costs for the insurance and also get them to participate and take care of themselves and their families, this is the formal policy that I'm asking for approval for the reduction in premiums that they would receive once they completed all of the points for doing all of their checkups for the year.
And I think that we kind of earlier discussion
We did.
regarding what the increase that we're experiencing, that obviously we need to do something to encourage our
Encourage, yeah.
employees to
I agree.
take better care of themselves and reduce the
Just
costs.
quit aging.
Yeah, I haven't figured that one out.
Well, we can retire.
Okay, make a motion to approve the wellness incentive policy effective October 1st, 2024.
I'll second that.
Motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, begin voting with Commissioner Doug Smith.
Aye.
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 Aye, motion passes. Thanks, Mike.
Thank you, Mike.
Next, consider a motion to approve an occupancy agreement with Leavenworth City Fire and EMS for a period of 1 year. Morning, Jamie.
Morning, Commissioners. In front of you is an occupancy agreement, as discussed. As you're aware, Leavenworth City Fire Station 3 is going to be replaced. They needed to find a relocation point, hopefully within their response jurisdiction for that firehouse. So they approached us at our EMS headquarters to be able to relocate their fire apparatus that is currently at their Station 3 until their station is complete. We put together a occupancy agreement. Legal has looked at it, and that is what is before you at this point. Our recommendation is we can provide that in hopes that in someday, if we were to have an emergency and need to relocate, they would do the same to us.
We hope so. That's what it's all about.
Yeah.
And you said the attorneys have already looked at this and we're
Correct.
good. And it's for a 1 year.
It's for 1 year, and if they need to go longer, then we'll come back
Come
and,
back.
and make that happen.
Okay.
Okay.
And I'll
Working
entertain a
together.
motion.
I like it.
I'll entertain a motion.
Move to approve the occupancy agreement with Leavenworth City Fire and EMS for a period of 1 year.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any further discussion? Begin voting with Commissioner Doug Smith.
Aye.
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 Aye. Motion passes. Consider a motion to approve the EMS director to place an order for the 2026 and 2027 replacement ambulances in the amount of $332,969.50 per unit.
Commissioners, unfortunately, due to build times, we were notified that build times due to acquisition of chassis is anywhere from 900 to 1,080 days. So if we do not start making our purchase agreements with our vendor, we will not secure our chassis. Already with the 900 days, this will put us receiving both the 2026 and 2027 truck to the end of 2027. And this is something that continues to fluctuate. They were catching up, and then we were notified that due to factory issues and chassis, we're at the 900 days. So we're here in front to get in front of the curve of that delay of 900 days, and I request that the board authorize me to make that.
Jamie, let me ask you a question. Don't, I'm an old guy, so we're just ordering the mainframe, but we're using the body of other vehicles. In other words, we're not we're not just throwing the whole unit out. We're making them replacement so we can keep other things in place. Isn't that what you told us?
Correct. These are replacement. This will take out a truck that's 8 years old and a truck that's 9 years old, and quite frankly, it's going to actually make them 9 years old before we swap them out.
But the cab itself, is that?
It will be, these 2 units will be my last 2 units that have to be replaced because these are Type 3, which are van chassis, and they no longer make diesel van chassis conversion ambulances, so you cannot take the boxes off of those and put those over on.
That was your plan in the future?
My plan in the future starts using the 2027 truck and moving that out into the replacement.
Okay. Thanks, Jamie.
Okay.
Make a motion to approve the EMS director to place an order for the 2026 and 27 replacement ambulances in the amount of $332,969.50 per unit.
Second?
Motion and a second. Any further discussion?
Yeah, now this price is locked in 4 years from now?
As of right now, in the contract, that is how they wrote it.
Really?
Mm-hmm. Because what we're doing is that we're actually purchasing those chassis, and they're going to purchase the chassis for us as soon as they become available, and that's the cost that they are going to give us for the cost of those units.
I hate to see what they cost in 4 years.
Yeah.
So on that same issue, the cost, you followed this, of course, but has it just been trending up, or did it take a big jump during COVID, or how's the trend on the cost?
We took a large jump during the 2022 year, and that was when all sorts of different products that made the trucks astronomically go up. This pricing is only about 3% higher than the ambulance that I'm buying in 2025. So if we can lock into the price right now, I think that we're again ahead of that curve.
Absolutely.
How does it compare to 2019?
2019's trucks we bought for $260-some thousand, I believe.
That's unbelievable.
Hopefully they don't have a clause in there that they can get out of it because of a strike or something.
Well, but
Let's hope not.
this is where we are voting it now.
It'd be an incentive for them to hurry up and get it early.
Okay.
All right.
That's all I have.
Okay. I have a motion and a second. Begin voting with Commissioner Doug Smith.
Aye.
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 Aye. Thank you, Jamie.
Thank you, Jamie.
Thanks, Jamie.
Last up, consider a motion to adopt Resolution 2024-24 and approve the rezoning as outlined in Case DV 24-110 based on findings of the Golden Factors. Morning, Amy.
Morning, Amy.
think John's coming.
He's drifting in.
All right. Before you is Resolution 2024-24, which is a request to rezone the property located at 16476 Leavenworth Road from RR 2.5 to R143. This parcel is identified as residential 3 units per acre in the future land use map. The Planning Commission did consider this request at their September meeting, and they did recommend approval on a vote of 3-2. So if you have any questions, the applicant also did provide a concept plan showing their proposed split. They would like to take off about a 1.5 acre in the southeast corner of the parcel. Questions, please let me know.
Comp plan says this is 3 units per acre.
3 units per acre.
And so they're going to 1 acre.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir.
I was going to ask. So the discussion at the Planning Commission, I've not had time to review that. What was the arguments?
There were neighbors that did come out and speak. They were concerned that it didn't meet the compatibility of the neighborhood. And then the 2 planning commissioners that did vote against it based their rationale off of that argument. The other 3, though, felt that it met the 7 golden factors that you have to consider.
So it doesn't match the zoning map, but it matches the comp plan.
It matches the comp plan. They just felt it didn't match the character of the neighborhood. There is some developed subdivisions further west that are 2.5 acres. I will say, though, within the notification boundary, there are a few parcels that are 1 acre in size. So I believe that was kind of the rationale for those who voted for it.
Just outside of Bayshore.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
you think Bayshore's going to stop growing. You couldn't stop it if you tried.
I'll make a motion to adopt Resolution 2024 and approve the rezoning as outlined in case DEV 24-110 based on the findings of the golden factor as set forth in staff report and substantiated by the finding of facts as adopted by the Planning Commission.
I'll second that motion.
Motion and a second. Any further discussion?
I just had a question for our
Yes, sir.
legal counsel. I don't know who was at the meeting, but so the argument about character of the neighborhood is kind of a subjective thing, but was there any legal basis or any legal argument that could be made to buttress that?
Well, Commissioner, the planning commissioners that felt, in their opinion, that it did not meet the character of the neighborhood, I think their rationale for it is their own. As for myself and my legal opinion, I think there is sufficient legal considerations that it does meet the character of the neighborhood based on what Amy has talked about with the surrounding area and the comp plan.
Thank you.
Good. Any further discussion?
We need to encourage development as close
Yeah.
to the cities as we can possibly
Absolutely.
get it to happen.
Absolutely.
And that's a very good point Commissioner Cos made. And people don't understand that, but our comp plan calls for the development to be near the cities where there are services, where there's sewer.
Utilities, yeah.
Or will be.
potential
The
to have
potential is
some-
there.
Yeah.
Right.
So, and that's a positive thing. And that's
Exactly.
really, that's using forethought, and it is a good thing.
Yep.
Correct.
If you live outside the city limits of Base or just outside, it's going to catch you.
Yeah.
It'll definitely catch you.
I forget my keys.
Definitely.
Yep. I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Begin voting with Commissioner Doug Smith.
Aye.
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 Aye. That concludes our board actions. Next, presentations and discussion items. I think we're going to have Bob do a video presentation, the same one he gave at the chamber meeting that I gave the speech for earlier. I should have done mine after yours, Bob, then it would have been exactly the same. Yeah, or backwards.
More Bob.
Hey, Dave, can you hit the lights right there? Perfect. Thank you.
Am I controlling this thing here?
You should be. It should be you.
First, I'm just play the video. That's where I started off with. Is there sound here?
Where's the sound? Where's the sound? It should be.
It's to the left, isn't it?
Oh, there we go.
But we need to be down in the bar to.
There we go.
There.
Playing here, can you hear it there?
There's a lot of misunderstanding about the role.
It's not playing. Sound's not playing through your system, is it?
But I think if you turn, I think you can turn the volume up yet again on the.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm down there on that thing. I think you can raise the volume more. That should help a little.
We still have not been able to get into our family farm.
Sorry.
But
Technology is not doing me well here.
Yeah, try to just put your mic on the laptop, maybe.
Is this on?
Yep.
Where's the speaker come out on the laptop? You know? Where's Larry?
There it is.
So there's a lot of misunderstanding about the role of appraisers and how they affect the property tax that homeowners pay. When someone hears the term appraiser, they seem to think of a scary figure reaching for their wallet. Not so. Appraisers don't set tax rates. Appraisers don't chase tax dollars. An appraiser is interested in fairly determining property values, and they take great pride in it. Property tax is determined by a simple formula. Appraisers only affect one of these variables, the value, and they do so with incredible accuracy. Appraisers aren't tax collectors or even tax setters. They're just fellow taxpayers, and their primary goal is to make everything fair and equitable. Imagine that you are in a restaurant with two friends. One orders a hot dog, one a plate of caviar, and you order a steak. The waiter comes to the table with a total bill of $100, but he doesn't know how much each of you should pay. If everyone paid the same amount, the guy who ordered caviar might be happy. But what about the guy who ordered a hot dog? Enter appraisers. The food is your property. Just like these meals, some people's property is worth more than others. And it's the appraiser's job to determine how much each property is worth. That's it. So, in the same way the value of these menu items would need to be determined, an appraiser places values on properties to ensure fairness and equity. After the appraiser determines the value of each property, local governing bodies will set their budgets for the coming year. They set the tax rate in order to produce the dollars needed for their budgets. The value of a property does not affect the amount of property tax needed. The sum total of all these budgets is a set number that has to be divided up among all the property owners. So even if everyone's value was cut in half by the appraisers, the tax rate would be raised in order to generate the same amount of tax revenue. The appraisers don't determine the taxes you pay. They just determine the values of properties to keep everything as fair and equitable as possible. When you notice a change in your property's appraised value, the change is the result of a never-ending quest for fairness and accuracy. Appraisers are graded on their performance, so there is a detailed system to get accurate valuations. First, the appraiser looks at similar properties that have sold, their sale prices, and the terms and conditions of each sale. That's the reason your home won't just be compared to the place next door. Studying things like square footage, age, and location helps appraisers determine how comparable another property is to yours. Even seemingly small details, like an extra bathroom or finished basement, can result in significant differences in value in two otherwise identical homes. Appraisers maintain a thorough database of real estate information to make this process as precise as possible. Changes in value are typically the result of local real estate market sales or major changes to a property. Remodel a kitchen or finish your basement, and your property's value could increase. When you see your home's appraised value, you can rest assured that the number has not been drawn out of a hat, nor generated with anything but equity and accuracy in mind. Long story short, appraisers are here to help, not trying to hinder. Their focus is accurate values, not tax collection. The only things an appraiser chases are fairness and equity, and they take great pride in it.
All right, the next thing I have asked to provide is compared to Leavenworth County valuations per class. These are assessed valuations to other counties, similar counties, and some counties in our area. You see Leavenworth County, we're at about 10.5% of our total assessed valuation is commercial, 78.25%. Is residential. That's the highest for residential as a percentage total valuation in any county in Kansas. That's a reflection of what we are. Have a lot of residential property, a lot of rooftops. We don't have as much commercial property. If you look, compare it to Butler County. That was one that was provided in the presentation by, actually it was provided by Mr. Smith, that was, or Powell, Mike Powell, excuse me, who was coordinating things. Butler County, you look at, they have 19.37% commercial. If you drive down the interstate, you can see, they have refineries, those sorts of things in that county that we do not have. You also have about 13.98% utility valuation, public utilities. It's nice to have a power plant in your county. Counties, you can kind of tell counties that have power plants by looking at their percent of utility valuation and the utility valuation they have. And you look at Wyandotte County, has quite a bit of commercial real estate. Of course, they have industrial. The industrial plants really provide a lot of valuation. Then you look at, you can see the other counties there. Riley County is similar to us, and they have a lot of exempt valuation. They have Fort Riley, and they have Kansas State University there. So they are similar to us, but they have more. Look at Reno County. They also have, they have a big public utility there too. So, as well as commercial base and a lot lower residential base. Industrial plants, like what you won't see in ours is the Hills Pet Nutrition that was built, and they're building another plant there. Those will be on exemptions for 10 years. So when they come on, they will make up some of that difference, quite a bit of that difference there. So those kinds of plants do help quite a bit once they get on the tax rolls. But you can see those there. The other slide I have here is average sale prices over 10-year period. And you can see, in 2014 we're down about $170,000, and by 2023 we were over about $330,000. That's quite an increase over that time frame. It took us 20 years to go from an average sale price of $100,000 to $200,000. It took us 5 years to go from an average sale price of $200,000 to $300,000. So you can tell how fast. People wonder why the property values, especially residential, but all property values have been increasing. Why that has increased so much, and the sale prices are why. When we start comparing them to them, and those are the standard which we're using to value properties. Those are standard by which we are judged if we are doing our job and appraising properties at market value. You can see the number of sales over that same time period. They do increase 2021, but 2022, 23. As interest rates increased, they dropped off quite a bit, but you can see the average sale prices above did not drop off. They did continue to rise some. I don't know if you want me to go through this. I did a brief Kansas history.
Whoever, I had a question on that last one. Well, how is it tracking for 2024 on these two?
Average sale prices are about the same. They're up just a little bit. What I've ran through this point and comparing to all of last year, so we'll see at the end of the year. The number of sales, we were up. We're still up for the year. August dropped off quite significantly compared to August of last year. September's picked up a little bit. We're about 3.5% for the year above where we were last year as far as numbers of sales.
So, and that's even in the face of these interest rates, our sales will still be.
Yeah. The average sale price is up a little bit countywide. I didn't run that by city. I just ran it countywide. But they were, where it was like 329, it was like 332 or somewhere in there, 333 somewhere in there. So, but that's at this point.
But we haven't been below 1,000 sales since 2014.
Yeah. Well, we were above that, and then you had the recession, 2008, and those numbers stayed low for quite a while. Yeah. And then 2014, that's just 15, that's where they just started really picking up a little bit. increasing. And that market was increasing fairly decently, and then, the pandemic hit, and then things went kind of crazy for a few years there.
Yeah.
But the
Kinda.
impact of inventory
Yeah.
and population increases in inventory that are, not keeping up necessarily is also going to drive the cost of the sales prices up. I mean, just kind of stands to reason that.
New construction costs have went up significantly.
That makes sense.
The Article 11 of the Kansas Constitution states, except as otherwise hereinafterly specific and provided, the legislature shall provide for a uniform and equal basis of valuation or rate of taxation of all property subject to taxation. That wording is specifically why any reforms to the valuation system have to be done with a constitutional amendment because of that wording. We have classification. That's in the Constitution. That's in Article 11, where we classify and tax different properties, commercial, residential, at different assessment rates for them.
So that'd have to be done in Topeka, right?
Constitutional amendment, has to be 2/3 of the legislature, then to the vote of the people.
Yeah. So I mean, that's when
But we
we're
can't put it on
educating
the
people on this, this is going to have to be handled in the legislature.
Correct.
County commissioners cannot handle this.
Yep.
We cannot change it. We cannot freeze your valuations.
At the local level, we don't determine what's taxed, or in the valuation system has to be. And as I'll go over it, understand why this. So in Kansas in 1959, they did a statewide reappraisal, and for several years after that, that reappraisal, one county tried to update their values. One county updated their property values while neighboring counties did not. That reevaluation was challenged in court. Arguments were made since school districts cross county lines, county boundaries, taxpayers were paying more than their shares as their values had been updated and the values in the same school district across county line had not been updated. So you had like two $50,000 houses on either side of the county line. One was raised to $70,000. The other one stayed at $50,000 in the same taxing, paying the same taxes as the school district. So it was uneven. That wound its way through the courts, ended up in the Supreme Courts, and Supreme Court ruled due to Article 11, which I just stated, an individual county could not update their values. Subsequently, any reevaluation would have to be done on a statewide basis. So property values were frozen at 1959 values. Reappraisals are unpopular. Legislatures don't want to vote for them. They're kind of like touching the third rail. So values are frozen for 30 years. And then in the mid-1980s, the values got all out of whack. So you would have a house built in 1980. It was valued at a 1959 value, and a house built in 1960 was valued at the 1959 value. There was just no rhyme or reason to the values anymore. The challenges, again, were starting to be made to the valuation system, and so in the mid-1980s, the legislature ordered a statewide reappraisal that took effect in 1989 in order to keep and not have to go through this again. That's when they ordered passed legislation to update values every year. There was some debate whether to do every 2 years. How often it did, they settled on every year, hoping that the values would just rise incrementally and wouldn't be big jumps. I don't know that they foresaw. Remember, back in the 1980s when interest rates were, they didn't have 15% jumps in 1 year in property values. In 1992, the state legislature passed a statewide general school mill levy in response to a lawsuit filed by several school districts over inadequate and ununiform funding of school districts. So now, in addition, that's your 20 mil statewide levy for general fund. You had in addition to school districts crossing county boundaries, you had one basically district statewide. So in 1992, the same year, the Attorney General, as a response to the levy, a statewide levy, Attorney General sued the Secretary of Revenue and Property Valuation Director, alleging appraisals were not uniform and equal statewide, even though they had gone through the 1989 reappraisal and had been updating values. There were some problems in counties with their values. The main questions that need to be answered in the lawsuit are appraisals uniform and are appraisals at market value. As a result, these two questions, state developed appraisal and maintenance specifications, specific steps that detail procedures to be followed, and studies we have to develop in order to achieve appraisal goals. They also implemented compliance audits to perform and ensure counties are following the procedures and implement the results of the studies and evaluations. And as I talked many times about assessment sales ratio studies, they had them. They weren't done very well, and they really completely redone the way they did assessment sales ratio studies and compliance studies. And there was legislation even passed to support some of these, like the sales validation questionnaire, which you have to file out when you file a deed. Those sorts of things were enacted during that time frame in response to that lawsuit. It's important to note that the state does not tell us what values to put on property, with the exception of agricultural land. But we have to follow the standards and procedures, and we have to value property within market value and that's how we.
And you have to be within 10% of what a sale, and you have to be within 10%. The county value has to be within 10% of that.
Somewhere in state law it says it allows a variation of 10%, and that's where that 10% comes from.
What did you just say? The state doesn't do what? You said the state did not do what? Tell you on the prices?
They don't tell us what the value of the property is at.
Yeah, but you follow their formula.
Except for agricultural.
But you follow their policy as far as how to go about doing
how to
the
go
business.
about doing it, yes.
Okay.
And essentially it's the sales that.
Thank you.
And that policy that you follow is standardized throughout the entire state of Kansas.
Yes, it is. We all go through the same. We have a compliance maintenance checklist every year. It's updated every year that we have to follow.
So ours should not really vary from anywhere else in the state as far as following the procedure and the policy and establishing the value.
Correct.
The market obviously drives a big difference in our areas.
And we're not going to value a property the same as Johnson County.
Right.
Yeah.
So, and one thing I wanted to make sure we were clear on, Bob, you have to submit all of that to the state, that information, which then gives you a report card, basically, quarterly, that says you are in compliance within the 90% or the 10%, or out of compliance. Is that correct?
They give us at the end of the year. They give us a report.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
and the procedures and the ratio study. They give us a mid-year to see where we're going on.
Yeah.
And then they give us an end of year.
So if you're outside of that 10% ratio, they require that you make that up.
Yes. We have to submit a plan of what we're going to do to correct that.
See, Mark, that's where I was going with it. Maybe it didn't come out clear. Mike was right on it, too, is that we don't set this. He has guidelines to follow, and through those guidelines, property tax is where it's at. So until the state, as Jeff said, changes the rules, then we're going to continue battling this. But one thing I will say, though, is from the county commissioners that I've had the pleasure to sit with up here, I see a lot of people campaigning, and one of the first things they talk about property tax. So if nothing else, we've got it out there where people are at least listening, and they're asking questions, hard questions about it. So we need to keep continuing going down that road and stay after them on that. I understand what you're saying, Bob. I appreciate what you do out there. You got a tough job.
And the two things I wanted to point out were in that report, playing by the rules. I looked at Bob's last report card, and he is almost always 10% below what is required to be put on these valuations. He can be 10% low or 10% high, and he consistently is right around 10% lower. The minimum he can get away with lowering your values, he's already doing it. The other thing I wanted to point out was to prove that fact. Off the top of your head, do you know about how many protest hearings you had this last spring? I think it was like 350.
It wasn't a lot this year.
So out of almost 33,000 parcels, only about 350 people said, we don't agree with your value. So that is an amazing statistic to me.
And that is done out of his office.
Yep.
But our valuations went up only, 4.5?
Yeah, the typical house was 3%. The median for a house was 3%. But the total valuation went 4.5%.
Yeah.
That includes new construction, anything else that's going on.
So they were getting a little bit less of a hit.
Yes.
Yep. And the reason I point that out is because I was here during reappraisal, and out of 30,000 parcels, we had 27,000 protest hearings. So it's come down a lot.
That was one of them.
Yeah, me too.
So I had a question, and I wanted to see just how you would answer it. This is a constituent question. Mike, here's the way we're viewing this is if we update or improve our property, this current property tax system in Kansas has a strange disincentive for us to do that because when we improve our property, we raise our values, and then we pay more taxes. How would you answer that?
I disagree with that.
That's basically, I mean, it's market value. What increases the market value of your house will increase.
So the current system, in a perverse way, has a disincentive to improve your property.
Well,
I disagree with that, Mike, because you don't have to do a darn thing and your appraisal goes up.
Well, but if you did an improvement, it would go up even
more. You're both right.
I was going to say, I haven't done a lot of things, and mine goes up every year.
So this is another reason to make.
Again, we're not shooting for raising the overall valuation. We're, if you remember the video,
right?
Maybe what your share of the overall pie is.
But I'm just saying what people, when they come and talk to you, that's what they're saying. Well, this system is set up so that why would I put a big improvement on my property when I know it's going to increase my taxes by $20,000?
Mike, even worse than that, though, is when you don't do anything in your property. You still got to come in and say
that's
improving your property.
But
there's more that goes into the valuation process than
absolutely.
just.
Yep.
Well,
if you don't, you're not at market value.
And that's why we've been talking to our legislators and saying, hey, 26 states have some kind of a cap or a breaker on it. Why not Kansas?
Safety valve.
Some of those exceptions, though, is if you do some, it depends on the wording, devil's in the details. But so like I'm getting ready to build a building on my property, it's going to increase it more. I would assume if somebody added a building, you would have to revalue that property. Or at least put an addition on. Now, I don't know, like I said, the devil's in the details. Well, somebody remodels it, does that get them revalued or not? If
it's
that
not
depends on all how
system.
the legislation's written.
So on another topic that was pertinent for today, how many, since we got that tornado relief bill for outbuildings, how many of those have gone through that we've actually approved in the last 2 years? It's about 200 of them or so?
I don't have a count.
I don't remember the amount, but we've approved a significant number.
We approved a significant number down at the tornado. Less with when we added the outbuildings when the legislature passed to allow the outbuildings, because we initially did the homes, and then when they changed the legislation, they allowed for us to do the outbuildings. There was less of those that came forward at that point in time. We did send them out to everybody that we had noted had outbuilding damage from that, but there was less that came back.
And
some of those,
and that's a piece of legislation that your commissioners pushed to get through.
Yeah.
And that was a direct benefit to Leavenworth County and Douglas County, basically the state.
You mean we didn't already have the authority to do that?
No.
No,
and that was.
You're kidding.
Come on now. I heard we did.
I read that somewhere.
I heard we did too.
I saw that on Facebook.
Commissioners, I'm just tying Commissioner Culbertson's, what he said at the beginning to what Bob is talking about. One of the reasons that the property tax system isn't that big of a deal to Topeka is they don't rely on property taxes. They use sales tax and income tax.
Right.
Their property taxes go to the schools at the 20 mills. Then they have a 1.5 mil, Bob?
1.5.
Yeah, that's a statewide that goes to their general operations.
Well, they don't return funds
it's
either.
Such a small percentage.
Mark, they don't return funds either, so theirs goes up in the billions.
Right.
But the people we send to Topeka, they're supposed to represent the people here.
Yes.
Yeah.
That
I
doesn't.
don't know what I think about that.
So one more question.
So it is
If
taxation,
on this
representation.
10.56 commercial real estate that you calculated for Leavenworth County, I know that like the Hills Pet Nutrition, they are paying into the 20 mills for the schools. Is that calculated into that amount?
It's probably not showing up in this chart though, because
Okay.
it's in lieu of tax. So it's being carried as an exempt property right now, exempt because of that's economic development. And so what I certified to the clerk is just a zero value on that. But they will take that. They can take what it was. I don't know how it shows up. The state assembled these charts. They do take that, what would be 25% of that appraised value, and apply that 20 mils to it. And then they're distributing it as in lieu of tax to the taxing units.
Yeah, so there's some revenue coming in already from
There
those
is some.
Pet
It's
Nutrition.
probably not showing up in this assessed value here, though.
Very good.
Any other questions for Bob? Thank you for that presentation, Bob.
Thanks, Bob. Always an education.
Any other presentations and discussion items?
I just got one
Go
item.
around the horn. We'll start with Doug.
Okay, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Doug.
Doug, Mike, you have anything?
Yeah, I have a couple things.
Thank you, Bob.
Town hall meeting tomorrow night, 6 p.m. in Linwood, and folks are been very concerned about the grade crossings being blocked down in that part of the county.
Will any state representatives be there?
I don't know.
Invite them?
I've not reached out.
Oh.
Did we get that letter?
I typically invite the representative from.
Yeah, I saw the letter.
Did we get that letter sent off,
But
Mark? We drafted a letter up to the railroad.
Yes, I believe the county council informed you that they sent it to Union Pacific, to the
Railroad.
FRA, who actually has oversight of those things. And
You got a copy of that, Mike?
we submitted it online as well.
I don't have a copy of that yet. I did
Okay.
look at it, but I
They're
didn't.
not
Take that with you.
From what I can tell,
don't care.
we're obviously not the only
There's the railroad.
community that is experiencing these. I think there's one down by Wichita that has, on an almost daily basis, they have lengthy, they've tried to pursue it and have gotten nowhere.
Well, that's because they're the railroad.
Unfortunately, the railroad's
King?
They're
have a lot of
big.
power.
They got a lot of power. But anyway, we're going to talk about county issues, but that's the big issue down in Linwood.
But is
in
it-
the southern part of the county that I've been hearing?
But isn't it a state law or federal that they can't block a railroad crossing for more than 10
Well, actually,
minutes?
That was challenged in court, and the court said that it was exceeded the authority of the group that had adopted it.
That's what I was
It was
wondering.
preempted.
Yeah.
That's what I was wondering.
It's
That's what I
federal
said.
level.
That's-
Those are controlled at a federal level, and therefore states and local governments can't.
That's what I thought.
But it does create a safety issue when we
It
have
does.
16,000-foot trains coming through the county and stopping and creating a wall.
Yeah.
And so I did reach out to there's a gentleman in Topeka that's head of the union for the conductors, and he said he can come and give a presentation to local governments about what our options are, what we can do for dealing with the grade crossing incidents. But one reason of having this town hall is I'm going to tell the folks tonight, I need all of your documentation, when it happened, the times, the dates, the exact crossing that was blocked, and then maybe we can move forward with some additional things we can do. But other thing, we did the Commissioner Culberson and I were on that legislative policy for KAC, and then I followed up, and they did make the number one priority is going to be unfunded mandates. So
That's good, because that's our big problem.
Their statement on property taxes, I think they can support the amendment, and they really didn't do much with LEBTR, but I think they can support it, but they left it very general, very worded generally. Tonight I'm meeting with the Alexandria Township Board at 6:30. We're going to be talking about fire protection and different options that they're looking at. That's in Springdale. Let's see.
Are they having trouble getting volunteers?
I think it's an issue.
It's a volunteer issue.
Always has been.
Heartland Flyer Coalition, which wants to expand rail service. There currently is rail service from Dallas to Oklahoma City. It's actually funded now. We have the federal funding and state matching, I believe, to Newton, Kansas. But this coalition wants to expand it all the way to Kansas City. So there'd be you could get it on a train and go to Dallas. So I'm meeting with them for lunch today. So we've already sent a letter to them supporting.
Yep.
But I'm meeting them for lunch. Let's see, property. Oh, I watched Commissioner Culberson give his speech the other day.
Chamber meeting.
It was good, and the superintendents were there, and they.
The response was good.
Yeah, it was really good, and it was really civil, and everybody was kind to each other. Those are, of course, property taxes is a really sensitive issue to a lot of people. And then next week, going with Commissioner Smith to Wichita on the economic development or economic climate.
Yeah, conference, yeah. It's a good conference.
So it's been a busy week.
That it? Commissioner Cos, you have anything?
All I had in the past week was just attending the Transit Authority meeting last Wednesday afternoon, and it didn't last more than 4 hours, so that was a score.
Sorry. I just have one, Chair.
That's her special power.
Yeah, I know it. I had the opportunity to attend Captain Ben Otavera's his retirement. He'd been with the Lansing Police Department about 28 years. I hired him back when I was a chief. He's gonna miss him. He was a great guy for y'all that knew him. But it was a well done ceremony, and I want to just wish him the best and his wife in retirement.
He cheats at paintball.
Huh?
He cheats at paintball.
I didn't say that, Ben.
I don't have anything more this week, so.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Motion and a second.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. We are adjourned.